You ever meet someone who treats other people's lives like a craft project? Neat, tidy, color coordinated, and gets furious if one little thing is off? That was Brenda, our HOA's self-appointed queen, and she decided my house was her favorite canvas to punish. So she picked at it every week, some new nit, some new find, like she was trimming a bonsai and I was the tree that wouldn't bend. I'm not being dramatic. By the time this was over, a mailbox had cost me far more than money. It cost her a piece of her ego and me a lesson I didn't know I needed. It started small, like most of these things do, a note tucked on the door, a polite-sounding email, a friendly reminder. The grass was a quarter-inch too long. Somebody's hydrangea had dared to bloom in an imperfect arc. And once my trash can hung around 5 minutes past pickup, and I swear I could hear the entire cul-de-sac breathe in unison, waiting for Brenda's verdict. I work long hours, been doing the grind for years. I keep things decent, but I don't color coordinate my life. I own a mailbox that's standard functional, nothing fancy. But Brenda said it was unsightly. When someone tells you the problem is your mailbox, you half expect it to be some charming Mrs. Kravitz thing, a polite neighborly gripe. But this wasn't even about aesthetics. Brenda wanted me to replace my mailbox with a specific model, the kind that costs more than a decent phone. She handed me a link like it was scripture, $500 stainless steel, engraved designer approved. I refused. I wasn't about to be bullied into replacing perfectly good property because somebody wanted my house to look like an ad. That's when the fines began, $50 a week for a non-compliant mailbox. 50, then a few more, then dozens, stacked like unpaid parking tickets from a bad dream. There's a particular exhaustion that comes from being fined for existing, like someone is measuring out your dignity in little incremental fees. I tried to talk to her to reason. I work long hours. I said I'll fix it when I can. She smirked and said, rules are rules. That's the thing for a bully. Rules are a hammer, not a framework. I started jotting everything down. Dates, notices, the tone of her emails, the time she left that nasty little sticky on the mailbox post. But there's only so much patience in a person. Eventually you reach a line and realize it's not about compliance anymore, it's about being ground down. So I sued. Listen, it's not because I'm litigious by nature, it's because this had become a pattern not just for me, but for everyone who'd rolled their eyes when Brenda walked by like she owned the pavement. I gathered the stack of notices, photos of my mailbox, taken at every conceivable angle, front, side, in the golden hour, in the rain, and copies of my written attempts to communicate. I'm not naive. I knew the HOA had lawyers, slick folks who could make anything sound reasonable, but truth has this annoying habit of sticking to paper when you document it right. Court day felt like walking into a TV courtroom drama, only the lights were mostly fluorescent and the coffee was mediocre. Brenda arrived in her carefully curated armor white blouse, expensive sunglasses, the smile of someone already counting the victory champagne. Their lawyer did the lawyer thing, phrases like aesthetic standards, community harmony, and willful non-compliance rolled around the room like polished coins. When the judge asked me to speak, I laid out the facts like a carpenter assembling a frame, steady, no flourish. Photos, bylaws, dates. The bylaws didn't specify mailbox models. They required mailboxes be in good repair and display the house number. Flicked through their documents and found a buried clause. Mailboxes must display house numbers for emergency services. My number was on the side of the box, not the front. Not a huge thing, but where they'd been hammering me with fines, the judge saw the opportunity to be precise and fair. He dismissed the fines not because I'd been perfect, but because the HOA's enforcement was arbitrary and capricious. He ordered me to comply, 3-inch weatherproof reflective numbers exactly on the front, and then to everyone's surprise, he paused. And this is where things twist, because court stories are rarely simple. During a break, an older man I'd assumed was just another neighbor leaned over and tapped my shoulder. Tom, he said I was treasurer last year. I have some minutes, Alicia. He called the steward standing by. They weren't right. I blinked. Tom had been quiet the whole time, the sort of guy who waves from his porch and never speaks during meetings. He walked up to the clerk and produced a thin envelope, pages with motions and signatures that didn't match lines crossed out and replayed. He'd been watching Brenda for a while, and the document showed a pattern: forged minutes, vote tallies, that were convenient, a ledger with entries that smelled like manipulation. You think you're the main character in your own life until an unlikely ally walks on stage and hands you a plot twist. Tom's evidence didn't just make Brenda look petty, it made the pattern unmistakable. The judge replayed the tape, my photos, the bylaws, Brenda's smear campaign, and now these ghosted minutes that suggested Brenda had been steering the ship with a very personal compass. That's when things stopped being about a mailbox and started being about accountability. I walked out of that courtroom feeling 10 feet tall and about as nervous as a cat on a hot tin roof. The judge's order was specific: the stickers, the specifications, and the mandate that they be placed on the front. I went straight to the hardware store, half exhilarated, half vindictive, and bought the ugliest, most gloriously obnoxious neon reflective numbers I could find. Think toxic green that glows like a lighthouse for tow trucks. I wanted to comply, yes, but I also wanted a little theater. If the law required numbers, then numbers they'd get, and I'd enjoy the whispering. The next morning, the stickers were gone, peeled right off. Security cameras are the new witness to civilization. I reviewed the footage, and of course there she was, Brenda in the dead of night creeping onto my property, fingernails working at adhesive like a raccoon with a mission. She didn't bother to hide her face. She probably thought she'd done me a favor, gone the extra mile to keep the neighborhood tasteful. Instead, she'd walked right into an evidence mine. I didn't confront her. I didn't shout or stand on the mailbox like some vigilante in a bad movie. I filed a motion for contempt, attached the clear footage of her vandalizing my property and violating a direct court order. There is something oddly delicious about watching the proud fall into the very legal trap they set for you. The judge watched the video in his chamber, then called Brenda back into court. Her smugness was peeled away the way the stickers had been slowly revealing something raw underneath. When the judge played the footage for the courtroom, you could feel the air change. People who had muttered about too many rules suddenly watched a woman who'd crossed a line she herself claimed to protect. He lectured her about the sanctity of court orders in that calm, precise way judges do, not theatrical, just undeniable. He found her in contempt, fined her heavily with the fines payable to me for damages and legal fees, and best little bureaucratic victory, ordered the HOA to have the stickers professionally installed with industrial adhesive so they couldn't be peeled away like gum, and to pay for it. They also issued a restraining order forbidding Brenda from setting foot on my property ever again. I still remember the look, not just of defeat, but of a slow, humiliating deflation, like someone had turned off a fountain mid-spray. She resigned from the board in disgrace. A week later, the neighborhood breathed like a collective sleeper, finally unburdened, and my mailbox, my ridiculous glowing neon mailbox, became something of a local legend. People honked, neighbors waved, someone took a photo and sent it around the neighborhood chat with a laughing emoji and an exclamation point. I won, yeah, legally and in public. But the real payoff came after in a quieter way. One evening I was watering the yard and Tom, the neighbor, walked over with a cup of coffee and said, "Never thought I'd say this, but thanks." He told me Brenda had been making other people miserable for years. Small cruelties that added up to big harm. He'd been too afraid to speak before, thinking the board was unassailable. Standing there under a lazy sunset, we both realized the lesson: institutions aren't inherently just. They're made up of people, and people can be petty, corrupt, heroic, or afraid. It's documentation and courage sometimes from the most unexpected corners that tip the balance. If I'm honest, there's the bitter aftertaste, because you learn that the law is a blunt instrument that can protect you, but only if you're willing to show up and do the work to make it notice. You learn that power can be small and mean and local, and it can ruin days with a sticky note. But you also learn that ordinary people, when they bother to keep records and speak up, even the quiet ones like Tom, can produce change. So yeah, my mailbox now looks like a hazard sign at night, and I love it. Every time the neon catches headlights, I grin, because it's not just about numbers on a box. It's a little monument to stubbornness, to the idea that you don't have to let someone with a clipboard bully you into submission. It's a reminder that small acts of resistance, when properly documented, can become a kind of justice. Here's the moral. If you insist on one, power is less impressive when it has to hide behind petty rules, and dignity is less expensive than you think. But you might have to fight a little to hold on to it. Don't mistake the dullness of a bylaw for fairness. Document everything. And when neighbors step forward, Listen, sometimes the ally you need has been waiting on the porch the whole time. Now, what do you think? Are HOAs guardians of community standards, or are they just little kingdoms where the loudest, most controlling voice gets to write the rules? Have you ever been pushed so far you had to take it to court or seen a neighbor? Quietly do the right thing at the right time. Drop a comment. Tell your story. And if you liked this, share it with someone who needs to see that sometimes the ugliest victories feel the sweetest.